Hope you booked a ticket for your summer cruise because Unfathomable from the Abyss is out and I am about to take a look at it. It's here. This is Optimal Play. I am Brandon, and this is kind of a new experimental type of video. I've never done an unboxing, but one of the reasons I started Optimal Play was because I wanted to make the content that I wanted to watch, or the type of content that I wanted to watch. And Unfathomable from the Abyss is one of the highlight games for me in the last few years, and YouTube's pretty barren on it. So I thought I would take a stab at putting something out there to show you the game, and I am going to kind of the channel's always also been about pointing cameras at ourselves as we hang out, play games, talk about games, do the things that we would be doing if the cameras were off. So this is going to be no different. I'm not just going to open this box and glance at what's inside. I am going to be reading some of the cards and the characters. I've already read the rulebook actually, so I can talk about some of the changed rules and really kind of getting into pre-gaming a little bit what this will actually do to Unfathomable, rather than just look at how many cards and tokens there are in the box. So before I open this box, hit the like button. Thanks. It's the one way to support us, is hitting those algorithm buttons, subscribing to the channel too. Helps us grow. If you're new to Optimal Play, playthroughs are our bread and butter, which is why I said this is something different, but maybe we'll do more of it. Let me know in the comments what you think. With that, I am going to hit this button over here, and I've got the Unfathomable board on the table as sort of a backdrop, and so that if there's anything we want to refer to, we can. And then Unfathomable from the Abyss. It's a pretty big box for what's in it, honestly. It's a big, as Fantasy Flights want to do, it's kind of a box full of air, but I'm guessing I can consolidate it into the main box, which is always appreciated. So let me, one last look from the Abyss, thumbnail pose, and put that on the floor. Alright, so here is the rulebook. Like I said, I've read it, so I'm somewhat familiar here. I'm going to set it aside for now, and we have a small token sheet in here. It's got 8 new characters, standees, 2 little, these are markers for new decks. From the rules, it looks like once they're punched out, they'll look like these printed ones here, and they'll kind of slot into these spots for the new types of cards. And then finally, there is a horror track marker that will also go in a standee, and it is used actually on a new track that is on the back of a new deck of cards. I don't know that I've ever advanced a standee on top of a deck of cards, but always the first time, I guess. So my natural instinct is to talk about the characters first, just because they're the biggest and probably the most obvious thing that will change your very first turn of the game. But I'm guessing that they're going to have to do with the new mechanics, and it's probably better to circle back to those. But we do have new reference cards that include some of the new rules and monsters. Do we have here the horrors? So it does add, let's get to that. Let's talk about the horrors. It adds 3. They are under one of these flaps. Nope, just air there. Here we go. Horrors, each in their own bag. There's 1 each of 3 new minis. And they are, as I flip to this for my own reference, we have the Shoggoth, a tentacled, mostly mouthed beast, as you would maybe expect it to be. Looks like this from above, this from the side. We have the Grasping Tendril, which is just tentacles rising out of the ocean. It's really a pretty cool mini. Kind of cool textured tentacles and everything here, but it's meant to sit in the ocean, and it's just tentacles. It wouldn't make sense on deck. The game mechanics keep it in the ocean most or all of the time. And then finally we have the Drowned Spirit. This one, it is sort of a seaweed bedazzled zombie. This one's going to float around the interior of the ship doing bad things. So the horrors are a new type of monster that if a Mythos card from the new Chaos deck has the new horror symbol on it, it activates all the horrors. If it doesn't, then, and let me pull these out. This is my first time opening these bags, but hopefully I can find the cards I'm referring to. If there's no horror, then it moves the horror standee that you make with this token along this track on the back of the horror deck. When it reaches the end, you'll flip over the top card. Oh, this one's Ominous Visions. This one actually says that the current player draws a boon and a treachery card, but nothing else happens. So I guess there's like a 1 in 4 chance that no horror spawns. Otherwise, this one says like the Grasping Tendril spawns, or it says activate the following icon, which if it's not on the board, spawns it. And so, a glance at what these do. We have the Shogoth. When it spawns on the deck in a random space. You roll the die. And then every time that it activates, it does the following. And this is me just reading from the back of this rulebook here. It tries to attack humans, and it adds 1 to its die result. All the horrors that can hurt human players do add that extra +1 to their roll. So they are more scary than the deep ones. If it doesn't have a human in its space, it defeats all the passengers in its space. Then, if there's no passengers, it damages its space. And that's if it's in an interior space. An interior space. I can talk. And then finally, if it can't do any of those things because it's not interior and there's no passengers or human players to kill, then it removes the top 4 cards of the item deck from the game without revealing them, then moves to an adjacent space following the movement arrows, or if it's already interior, toward the closest undamaged space. It moves like a deep one if it moves. But yeah, so it just does the first available thing of those 4 things: attack humans, attack passengers, damage its space, which I guess this really makes it a lot like the deep one monsters, doesn't it? So the Shogoth's not that different. It just activates with the horrors, and it hits harder. Also, horrors cannot be defeated by player attacks. So that's another big difference between this and the deep ones that you try to mow down. The Shogoth, if you successfully hit it with an attack, you just get to push it 1 space. You can try to push it out of the ship that way, and then the only way that you can defeat the horrors and removing them from the board until their activation icons make them come back is with the tracks. Those tracks being the ritual that still blow up and defeat everything on the exterior of the ship, and the travel track. These can get pushed into the water, and then the ship moves and they fall off the board, pretty much just like the Monarchs do. So that's the Shogoth. The Drowned Spirit, then, it spawns at an interior space and pretty much stays there. It prioritizes damaging its space. It actually never attacks humans. It just floats around damaging spaces. And if it can't, it removes the top 4 cards of the spell deck from the game without revealing them, and then moves to an adjacent space. So both of those things I think that they're mainly flavor, right? Like the Drowned Spirit is bashing all the items around the ship, just causing destruction. The Shogoth is eating spells, right? Oh, no, sorry. The Shogoth is items. The Drowned Spirit is spells. Removing those cards without revealing them is not going to affect you in most games, so it really is just flavor, unless it happens so many times that those decks run out, which I guess they're not big decks, so maybe that needs to happen about 3 times. Yeah, I'll be interested to see whether that ever matters. And then last, and I think my favorite, the Grasping Tendril. So this spawns in a random water space, using just the deck numbers, since water spaces don't have numbers. And it actually is in the water, and this long tendril that sticks out, it is considered to be on the deck. So it's in both spaces, wherever it is. It's in the water and on the deck. When it activates, it tries to attack a human player, adding 1 to its die result, and then it moves towards the front of the ship. So like a Monarch, it kind of swims forward when it activates. But if there's no human players to attack, it takes the passengers in its space and throws them into the water. Move each passenger from the tendril's deck space to its water space, then move the tendril 1 space towards the front of the ship. So it throws passengers in the water. Finally, if there's no passengers, it actually spawns a passenger in the water. So it adds passengers. It's like risk the passenger and put it in a very difficult place to save it. So you are likely to just start losing souls if you let this thing run rampant. So this one never damages the ship. So they sort of all have one thing they don't do. No, I guess the Shogoth kind of does everything. Attacks humans, defeats passengers, damages the ship. The Drowned Spirit is the one that only damages the ship, and the Grasping Tendril only attacks humans and passengers and does not damage the ship. So that's a big thing. I assume that I assume that the Mythos cards that are added here, which is I think 72, it looks like it nearly doubles the size of the deck. It probably has a lot of horror activation icons so that you have it happen periodically. And to that end, let's glance at a couple of these new Mythos cards. So yeah, 72-ish cards. There's some new mechanics there, but I'm gonna not look at those for now and just look at some of the standard new ones. And as I'm flipping through, every single one, literally all of them activate the horrors, either activating them on the board or moving this track towards one spawning if it is not on the board. There are no horrors on the board. So yes, it seems like that is in addition to a Monarch or a Deep One activation. So, that's pretty scary. Okay. For the reasons I'm going to talk about soon with the boon cards and the allies, I sort of had reading the rulebook, I interpreted this as making the game easier for the humans, which I actually thought was a good thing because the humans, in my experience, and I've played maybe 10 times, humans never win. This game is very, very difficult for the human team. That said, I had assumed when I was reading the rulebook that sometimes, or like that the horror activation replaced the Monarch or Deep One activation. It does not, though. It does both. So the horrors are just an additional bad thing happening. It's not something that is happening instead of the ones you're used to. That's pretty rough. Okay. Well, I'm just going to glance at a couple of these for fun. Like Tidal Turbulence. A rogue wave strikes the ship and several crates of cargo are thrown overboard. The crew moves to recover as much as possible before it is swallowed by the sea. It's a big old test, or skill check rather. Pass, no effect. 11 plus, lose 1 food or 1 fuel. Fail, lose 1 food and 1 fuel. Very, very standard. I'm going to glance through these. Like, are there any that kind of feel like they have new mechanics or anything? Honestly, let's skip ahead a little bit. Well, like this Tug of War card, if you pass its skill check, it says a grotesque tentacle reaches out of the water and into the ship's galley. Crew members struggle to wrest crates and supplies from the creature's grasp. If you pass, you spawn an ally in the galley. I'll talk more about those in a second. On an 11 plus, lose 1 food and spawn the grasping tentacle, or tendril rather, in space 6. And on a fail, you lose 1 soul, spawn it in space 6, and activate it. That seems real rough. Yeah, some new decisions. Salvage or let them rest. Send them away or let them shout. That has to do with risking passengers. Okay, so yeah, lots of new Mythos cards, and they look pretty standard. But before I move on from those, there are some cards here that are a new mechanic. So there are, of course, just like in the base game, there are personal crises for the new characters. I'm probably not going to read those here, but there's one for everyone. It looks like there's 8 for 8 characters. But you no longer shuffle them into the deck and just kind of get that streaky randomness of... Because I don't know if that's your experience, but I found they are real bad. It's like if you draw 2 or 3 personal crises in the first part of the game, you're going to be set pretty far back from where you would be had you drawn regular crises. Or Mythos cards. No, they are crises, right? I've played Battlestar Galactica so many times I sometimes mix up the language. Anyway, instead of that, we're going to put a higher number of these personal crisis cards. I think it was like 12 into the Mythos deck. And whenever this gets drawn, the player who is drawing it resolves their own personal crisis. So you always have a risk of hitting your own personal crisis. You never like draw someone else's and hand it to them anymore. But if you've already resolved your personal crisis, you do discard it. And then when you draw the personal crisis Mythos card, it goes to the person to your left, or yeah, it's somebody else's. Let's see. The next human in clockwise order with a character-specific Mythos card resolves it. So yeah, someone's going to resolve it, but it takes. I think it smooths out kind of the luck on that a little bit. Is the intention there, and it also makes it so that they aren't all just, I guess, swimming in a sea of this giant Mythos deck like they would be otherwise. Since you do just smash these two decks together and have a real big deck. Yes, I said big deck. Speaking carefully there. Okay, speaking of, it is a hot Los Angeles summer day right now as I'm filming this, so I'm drinking a hard lemonade. Gets the brain wheels turning. My watch is blowing up. Go away, Board Game Arena. Okay, what else is new? We have... So I've pretty much touched on the new mechanic for the evil side of the game. But the new mechanic for the human players, the good players, we haven't touched on yet. So one big one is passengers and allies are a pretty big overhaul. So there is this ally deck here. I'll look at 3 or 4 of them in a moment. Whenever a passenger is rescued, it actually gets removed from the board and replaced with an ally in that spot. So like here's an example. I rescued a passenger here on deck space 5, drew the mechanic off of the ally deck, and it sits on this space of the board belonging to no one. And it says it has this cost of 4. That means to use the mechanic, you need to discard cards of 4 value from your hand. They can be treachery cards and stuff if you happen to draw those into your hand. And then this one says, repair one space that does not contain an enemy. Shuffle the damage card into the damage deck. And then the mechanic wanders, and I'm trying to remember exactly what that does. They basically move around. Wander. Ally abilities cause the ally to wander. When an ally wanders, the player who used the ally rolls a die and moves the ally card to a different ship space that matches that result. The player who used the ally chooses whether the ally moves to a deck or interior space. If the result of the roll matches the ally's current space, it must move to the other space that matches the results. Yeah, so they're going to be bouncing around the map, actually. Like, it doesn't move adjacent. You would use the mechanic, you would roll the die, you roll a 4, you can choose which of the 4s it moves all the way to. It is not an action to use these. You can only do once on your turn, I believe, but you can do it before taking any action. So, and you also cannot... you cannot use it before playing a card that grants someone else an action and they use a passenger. It's like only once per kind of action of the game, I believe. So yeah, these will be kind of littering the board. They can get defeated, by the ritual if they're on the outside, or, this is not important enough to look up live on video. I can't remember whether the deep ones attack the allies. Or what, but, I think, no, I do remember now. The allies get defeated and removed from the board anytime that they are alone with monsters. If there's no human players and monsters enter their space, they're just gone. It doesn't use up monster attacks. So you want to protect them if they are valuable. We have another one, Able Seamen. For 3 value worth of cards, rescue each passenger in one deck space or one passenger in any water space. Do not spawn an ally. Okay, so it doesn't spawn allies, but it lets you remotely get passengers, including out of the water. The security officer, it actually says choose a human and resolve this skill check. If the skill check passes, move them to the brig, and then it wanders. Soldier, defeat a deep one in any space. We've got the host, choose any human. They may move to any space, or any ship space, except the brig or sickbay. So, yeah, they offer new opportunities to the human players to get a little bit more out of their turn or with their cards, and also they are just an upside to rescuing passengers, which I know from reading Board Game Geek forums and stuff, people are starting to say the best way to play as the human team was to just not rescue passengers because they weren't worth it. They were a waste of actions and you almost never lost the game on souls, which is what you would lose from them. So this gives you a reason to rescue them. And speaking of rescuing them, the basic rules for the rescue passenger action has changed. It's probably one of the biggest reasons that we have new reference cards here. Is on the list of actions you take on your turn, one of them is now rescue each passenger in your space, or one passenger in an adjacent water space. Then spawn one ally in your space. So you can now have passengers in the water, you can rescue them from an adjacent space. And if you get multiple passengers in the same space, which can totally happen, you can rescue them all for one action and get those allies stacked up there that you can, then you'd have options to use immediately. So yeah, that just got more powerful in every way, and that's one of the new things. Another new thing is new skill cards. I'm sure we all saw this coming. I'm excited to take a look at them. We have the biggest new thing is we have boons. A new I was going to say blue and show the back side of the card. They are obviously they just look like other cards on the back, but they have blue coloring. They are a deck that you can only draw from when a card allows you to draw from it, I believe. And I'm gonna guess that one of the new characters gets access to it as their special, as something special about that character. We'll take a look at them. But the boons are cool because they have like a regular skill deck. They range in value from 0 to 6. By the way, 0 and 6 being added to all the decks by this expansion. But these cards always support all skill checks, so they always count positive for the humans in a skill check, it's the anti-treachery. It's just all good. And then they also have cool actions on them, like the companion card. As an action, look at the top 2 cards of the ally deck, spawn one in your space, and put the other on the bottom of the ally deck. And it looks like it's pretty similar to most skill decks, where all the 1s and 2s are companions. Okay, so there's only a few different things in here. The 3 is Ingenuity. You can discard this card for an ability as if it were any skill type. Discard it for an ability. Oh, okay, so like a lot of the character abilities want you to discard, a strength card or something. I wonder if that includes the boiler room, that type of thing, where you can discard it for the room spaces. I'm guessing so. Maybe it clarifies in the rules, I'm not sure. But so that's the 3s and 4s. The 5s and the 6 are Providence. As an action, the next time you would lose 1 or more resources this turn, lose 1 fewer resource. Okay, so you can play this and then take like the boiler room action and not lose fuel, I guess, is what that's for, to guarantee that you don't lose. That seems good. That seems great. And then the 0 in here, and my understanding is that it added a 0 to each deck that works similarly. This is a skill check effect. Like if you are familiar from Battlestar Galactica, the expansions add all these skill check cards that they resolve when they are put into a skill check. So I have mixed feelings about Unfathomable adding them, because I actually really enjoyed them being gone, because the math is so complicated with all these effects in the skill checks on Battlestar Galactica, and when you're playing Unfathomable and it's just really quick arithmetic and nothing that gets put in there, you don't have to pay attention to any of its text. It is so snappy and so pleasant. I really was hoping that they wouldn't just add this back in the expansion, which they've done here, but it does seem to be really sparingly with literally a single 0 value card in each deck. So this one says, during a skill check that contains this card, treachery cards become a supporting skill. Supporting skills count positively toward the skill check total. Oh, okay. So if you have accumulated some treachery cards in your hand, and the rulebook mentions, if you had quizzed me, I would have said that the base game of Unfathomable does sometimes force human players to draw treachery cards like Battlestar does. I guess it didn't happen, I don't think, because the rulebook mentioned that now that's a thing. So anyway, now you might end up with treachery cards in your hand as a human player. This lets you play them as supporting, or kind of lets you stab the hybrid players, the traders in the back, turning all their negative treacheries into positive. So that seems really good. By the way, this boon deck does contribute 2 cards to the Chaos deck, but also the Treachery deck now does. So the Chaos deck is going to be a little swingier with 14 cards each time you reset it. Alright, I want to take a look at the other skill cards it added. So my understanding, from the rulebook, each type of skill card got a 6, but it has the same text on it as the 5s do. So, like, influences inspiring speech, action, roll a die. If the result is 3 or more, gain 1 sanity, otherwise lose 1 sanity. That's what the 5 did, so this is just, I don't know what's going, like, it's an odd decision to me to just add 6s and have them do the same things as the 5s. It's just like, why? It just makes the game a little swingier. I don't know. It does look like the Treachery is one exception to this. The 6-value Treachery says action. Choose and resolve one of the following icons, and it has these specific activation icons for the 3 horrors. So this card lets lets an evil player, as an action, activate one of the horrors, which could be real bad. Ultimately doesn't actually seem that bad. If I was a hybrid player, I would probably save this to be a -6 in a skill check, but that's just me. So not too exciting, those new 6s, but the 0s are all new, so let's take a look at them. The Influence 0, and I realize I'm laying them out, and I'm sure my camera doesn't pick up this small text, but I'll read them to you. So the Influence card, 0 value, is called Direct. After resolving the effects of a skill check that contains this card, the current player moves any human who is not in the brig to another ship space, except the brig or sickbay. Wow, so it's a teleport. The person who is resolving the skill check, or the current player rather, chooses who it is. But yeah, lets someone teleport. That seems powerful. And you know, right there, I know that the... we haven't looked at the 0 treachery. The 0 boon did affect the skill check math. This one doesn't, which I like. Because, again, I didn't really like how mathy the skill checks got in Battlestar with all the expansions. The lore 0 value card is called Oust. After resolving the effects of a skill check that contains this card, the current player moves 1 deep one in any space to another space. Seems less powerful than moving a human player, but yeah, move a deep one out of a space it's about to damage or something. Seems good. In Observation, we have Inspiration. After resolving the effects of a skill check that contains this card, the current player chooses one other supporting skill card from the skill check and adds it to their hand. Okay, lets you take only a supporting card, but and it doesn't change the math. It just lets you draw that card out of the skill check to play again later. Okay, I'm actually finding these more... I'm not as upset about these as I thought I might be, because they're so far not making the game so mathy. Rumble in Strength says, after resolving the effects of a skill check that contains this card, the current player chooses any human. That human performs an attack against an enemy in their space, or performs the action ability of one of their weapon items if possible. Okay, so grant someone an extra attack. A lot of these are kind of, they give you roughly an action. They let someone move, they let someone attack, they give someone a card, which is not really equivalent to an action, but still has a similar vibe to it. And the Will deck 0 cost card or 0 value card is Evacuation. After resolving the effects of a skill check that contains this card, the current player chooses one passenger on the board and moves it to another deck or water space. Yeah, if these were equivalent to like an action, it seems more like you would get to rescue it, but maybe even rescue the passenger but not spawn an ally, something like that. But anyway, no, this just moves one. That seems a little weaker to me. And finally, the Treachery. I'm guessing this will not be a good thing for the humans. 0 value Treachery card is called Turmoil. During a skill check that contains this card, boon cards become an opposing skill. Opposing skills count negatively towards the skill check total. Oh, it's exactly the opposite of Revelation from the boon deck. It takes the good cards, turns them bad. Makes sense. Okay, I'm not so mad about this. I thought I would be disappointed to see this added to the game, and actually, I'm fine. I think it's cool. Cool, yeah. I'm happy. That is the skill cards. What else do we have here in this stack of cards? Oh, we of course have feats for the new characters. We will probably glance at some of those as we look at the characters. It looks like we have 2 new damage cards that get shuffled into the damage deck. One says False Alarm, remove this card from the game. That's incredible. Well, that makes the game better, easier for the humans right there, that there is a non-damage damage card, and then it doesn't even cost a resource. And minor structural damage. Place this card in the space being damaged. Players are not defeated and allies do not flee. And as an action, repair this space. Oh, okay. So this is this is damage that just goes in the space being damaged, is easier to repair because it doesn't cost you value worth of cards from your hand, and it means the players who are there and the allies do not get defeated. Yeah, this is just making the game easier for the humans with the 2 new damage cards. Okay. Like I said, I was looking for the game to get a little easier for the humans, so fine by me. Looks like we have new item cards here too. Decent little grip of them. There's a dozen or so of them. Stuff like the Notebook. After you perform the action ability of a non-treachery skill card, value 1 to 4, you may return that card to your hand once per turn. Wow. to be able to get a good card. I guess it doesn't work on the 5s and 6s, but get a valuable card and use it every turn, returning it to your hand, or just keep that value in your hand for a skill check after you played one. That seems very powerful. And the items in this game are great. The fillet knife action: perform an attack against an enemy in your space. Then you may perform an attack against a different enemy in your space. Okay, just a double attack. Not that different from the guns that say perform an attack and then another action. So, let's look at the Cursed Mask. So this adds a treachery to your skill card array, meaning you'd be drawing a treachery in addition to your normal 5 cards. This says when this card would leave your play area, draw 1 treachery card instead, and just add it to your skill set. Whoa. There's really no upside here. This is only good if you're a hybrid. This is a bad item if you're a human. That's fascinating. These have never been this has never just been downsides before to get stuck with. But wow, okay. That's fascinating. So now I've got to remind myself how the cargo hold works. You have an option to only... you look at the top 2 cards. I was trying to remember if you spend a card of a certain value and then draw that many and choose between them. Okay, so you always look at 2. I don't know, I guess you would only pick the Cursed Mask if you're evil, right? Or if there's any circumstances where you just draw 1 random item from the deck, you risk getting it. That's a fascinating one. I'm not sure what that's going for there. I was skimming through to see whether there's one that gives you +1 a boon card as part of your every turn card draw. It doesn't look like it, so I'm just going to look at one more card and move on. Like we have Mao. It looks like a cat. Maau. It's a creature. After a die is rolled during your turn or action, you may choose one, add 2 to the result, or subtract 2 to the result once per turn. Wow, that seems really good. During your turn or action. So it's like +2 or -2 once per pretty much round of the game, because only during your turn and once per turn. Maybe ultimately not that impactful, but having a +2 or a -2 in your pocket can really save the game in the late game. So, okay, new items. We have new spells also. Looks like about 10 new spells. Oh, and we do have the card that gives you +1 boon in your card draw is a spell. It's called Blessing. Place this card in any character's play area. They draw 2 boon cards and roll a die. If the result is 4 or less, lose 1 sanity. Right, spells usually risk sanity. And then add the skill below to their skill set, and they get +1 boon. That seems incredible. Then there's things like Cast Out. Defeat 1 enemy in any space. Then roll a die. If the result is 5 or less, lose 1 sanity. Otherwise, you may resolve the spell again. Okay. Uncanny Luck. Play this card in any character's play area. After a die is rolled during that character's action, they may re-roll that die limit once per turn. If the result of the re-roll is 2 or less, lose 1 sanity and remove this card from the game. Okay, so every re-roll, there's a 25% chance that you just lose a sanity, and that ends. And let's look at one more. Temporal Discovery. Place this card in your play area. After the travel or ritual track advances, you may remove this card from the game to advance that track 1 additional space. If you do, roll a die. If the result is 5 or less, lose 1 sanity. Okay, so it's a future opportunity to advance the travel or ritual track. And when you do, you risk a sanity on a pretty high chance, 5 or less. Okay. These are cool. They feel like more spells. I think that of the ones I looked at, the Blessing seems like the most kind of original and interesting. But I'll take them. And there are also some new waypoints this is the last of the small cards other than the feats. So we can look at a few. I'm just glancing at the number spread. It looks like, yeah, they are... there's the most 3s and then some 2s and a couple 4s. So I don't think that the deck's average distance is changing here. A 4 distance one is Bone Chill. Lose 2 fuel. Each human discards 2 skill cards from their hand. 4 distance for 2 fuel though. I wouldn't be too mad about that. We've got a 3 distance Kelp Forest. Lose a fuel. Resolve the activation icon for the Grasping Tendril. And we've got a 2, something like Tranquil Tides. 2 distance, roll a die. If the result is 5 or more, each player draws a boon card. Otherwise, each player draws a treachery card. Oh, so it's a no fuel, 2 movement, but then you have a coin flip whether everyone gets boons or everyone gets treachery. Okay, I can appreciate the extra variety in the Waypoints deck. Waypoint, I think that's Waypoints. I think that's the name of the cards. The ones that do the distance, the ones that win the game. You know the ones. Okay, I think the one other thing I want to talk about is are they preludes? What do the rules call these? Because they remind me of Eldritch Horror preludes. But yes, they are preludes. Okay, so these add variety to the setup of the game. You draw 3 random ones, a day, dusk, and night card. Is that what they're called? Something like that. And the day one tends to tweak the setup of the game in a way or the rules of the game maybe, in a way that's favorable to the humans. Dusk tends to be a neutral but change thing, and the nighttime prelude cards tend to change the game in a way that makes it easier for the hybrids, the evil team. And this is something I'm excited about. The default way to play the preludes is to draw 1 of each, but you can tweak the balance of the game. Like if you're my play group and the humans never win, you could just not draw that night prelude so that the evil team doesn't get that boost. Or you could draw an extra daytime prelude to get the same effect via bolstering the human team. So let's take a look at a couple of these. They don't have art or anything, which is always a little disappointing, but I guess that they have a lot of text on them. So like we have Outpace. This is a daytime one, so it should help the humans. Let's see. The ocean glides by as the Atlantica's engines power it toward its destination. A lookout spots a pod of dolphins off the port side. They provide fleeting amusement for the passengers, but are quickly left behind. Other odd debris floats by and seems to be caught up in the ship's wake. But nothing is visible for long as the ship steams ahead. This says, return 1 deep one from each of the following spaces to the supply. Deck space 1, deck space 2, water space 1 through 4, water space 5 through 8. So that is going to remove a lot of the game's starting deep ones, right? I think that's the majority of the ones that start on the board. So that seems pretty good. Another one is Respite. Despite setbacks, the crew of the Atlantica is determined to keep the ship on track. When difficulties arise, the crew is well trained to handle them, and their resolve keeps the ship safe. But even this crew has their limits. Should something truly disastrous occur, they may only be able to mitigate it for a short time. We place this card near the Mythos deck, and then during the first Mythos step of the game, instead of drawing and resolving a Mythos card, the current player resolves a Choose Tracks icon, then remove this card from the game. So it simply replaces your very first Mythos card, your first Crisis or Decision, with a freebie, probably travel move. These are really straightforward ways to make the game easier for the humans. Let's take a look at the Dusk cards. By the way, there were 5 daytime cards. Looks like 5 of each type. I'm not going to read every single one to you here, but that's what they seem like. We've got as a Dusk card, and it might be Twilight. I'm just guessing at what the name of it is, but anyway, valuable lessons. You spend your time on the Atlantica conversing with other passengers and crew members. They share their stories and life experience, and you develop a kinship with your fellow travelers. In the course of your discussions, they impart some wisdom that may prove helpful in the days to come. Each player takes 1 random unused feat card from the box and places it in their play area. Oh wow, all players get another, an out-of-play character's once per game ability? That's what a feat is, right? That seems cool, and it sounds probably actually slightly helpful to the humans, if I were to gauge it, but since some of those will be hybrids that could use that feat before they reveal, maybe not. What's another one? We have spreading rumors. Disquiet proliferates amongst the passengers and crew. Whispers of unsavory characters and secret danger are perpetuated, debated, and rebuffed in equal measure. There's a lingering sense of something unknown, which is speculated about, but just out of reach. Shuffle 1 boon card and 1 treachery card into each of the following skill decks. Influence, lore, observation, strength, will. Okay, so it just means each skill deck will have 1 card in it that you unexpectedly draw a card that doesn't match the deck, and it's a boon or a treachery. It doesn't, that seems like a really just pretty minor tweak. And I guess then this goes away, so if you reset the decks mid-game, it doesn't look like this puts another one in. Okay, let's take a look at a couple of the nighttime cards. These are the ones that make the game better for the hybrids, potentially Potentially the ones that I am least likely to use, but we will see. We have something like shortage. It becomes clear that there is an issue with the ship's manifest. Details are missing, counts are off, and soon the crew is tasked with taking stock. The conclusion they come to is grim. The Atlantica is not as prepared for its journey as one might have hoped. Roll a die and find the result below. If the matching resource is at its starting value, lose 2 of that resource. Otherwise, re-roll the die until you lose resources this way. And on a 1 to 2, it's fuel, 3 to 4 food, 5 to 6 sanity, 7 to 8 souls. So this is just -2 to a random resource at the start of the game. -2 to fuel, in particular, strikes me as the most brutal, because you just have to spend fuel to win the game. The other ones are, you really only lose them as consequences for things, versus fuel you need to proactively spend. So that could be... This could be not so bad, but also could really hose you, I think. And it's kind of frustrating that it does it at the start of the game. Yeah, I don't know. What about something like Doom? A chill runs down your spine and the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end. A terrible, unknown sound rises from the deck, and you're overwhelmed with dread. Something is on the ship. Something that ought not exist anywhere. Reveal cards from the top of the horror deck until you reveal a card that shows a horror. Spawn the matching horror in deck space 1. Shuffle the horror deck. Oh, so you just start the game with a horror on deck. Okay, yeah, those seem pretty bad. Overall, these don't seem... maybe the resource loss one seemed like the worst. Like, for the most part, these seem pretty minor, and I think I will like them as just kind of a little variety and setup from game to game. But yeah, certainly the first time I play From the Abyss, I'll follow the default rules of one of each type of prelude, but then I could see my group being like, well, after the humans lose, there's no night prelude next time, or if the humans win, there's no daytime prelude next time, using it sort of as a balancing tool, which I think is really welcome, because my group has spent hours on Discord talking about, we almost never house rule games. We're not really house rule gamers, but we have batted around so many ideas for house ruling this game. The problem is we lose it in so many different ways, so that if it's an easy house rule, like, hey, resources start at 9, you can still lose to damage or something just as easily. So we've never really settled on one. We never have actually implemented anything to adjust the game difficulty, but having an official way to do it is super cool. I think we've been through the new things, the new mechanics, and we can look at the new characters now, and we will be able to understand what they do. So let's take a look at... oh, you know what? As you could tell from me reading the cards, I love the flavor text in these games. I'm a big fan of reading them. The flavor text on these characters is very long, though. It's 3 to 4 paragraphs, so I will spare you the flavor text on these characters, I guess. But let's take a look at their front sides. Oops, as I'm pressing the wrong buttons. Okay. So we have Antar Al-Fakahani. I'm going to butcher some of these names, and I apologize to people who know better than me how they should be pronounced. And then we do have new, by the way, Keeper of the Tome and Captain cards, so I will keep these handy so we can see where these people fall on it. Like, he is 4th in line for the Keeper of the Tome, and way down on the Captain line of succession. So he gets 2 lore, 3 observation. Oh, he's the sleuth. Okay, so that explains the high observation. And he gathers evidence. After resolving the effects of a skill check, if you're not in the brig or sick bay, you may choose one opposing skill card of value 1 to 4 from that check and add it to your hand. Oh, so it's basically like that, one of the new skill cards that lets someone do that. And his Malign Epiphany, when it reveals a traitor, if you're not in the brig, shuffle 4 treachery cards in the Chaos deck, then draw 4 treachery cards. Yikes. Okay, and finally his feat is Revelation. After skill cards are revealed during a skill check, if you're not in the brig, you may add 1 or more skill cards from your hand to the check. If you do, remove this feat from the game. Okay, so it gives you that opportunity to like hold back a big number and only play it if you need it, and then use your feat. All right, I like it. So far, I was not rewarded for waiting. This card was pretty straightforward within the rules of the base game. Let's check out Ida Lawrence, the ship's cook. And it doesn't just say, I didn't add the ship. It says, the ship's cook. She has 2 influence, 1 lore, 2 strength, and she is seasoned. After you perform the action ability of a non-boon skill card, you may draw 2 skill cards of the matching type, once per turn. Whoa! That seems incredible. The card, I find that I use the actions on the cards a lot. They seem very worth using, and then to draw 2 skill cards when you do? Very, very strong. When she reveals as a traitor, she gathers friends. If you're not in the brig, remove a total of 3 ally cards from the board and or the top of the ally deck from the game. Then roll a die 3 times and spawn 1 deep one in the deck space that matches the result. So you convert 3 allies into deep ones. Woof. Okay, that seems painful. And her feat is Feast. Before an activation icon or track icon is resolved, if you're not in the brig, you may lose 1 food to move any number of humans and allies to the galley. If you do, remove this feat from the game. Lose a food to gather everyone in the galley. So that could be used to like get people off the decks before the ritual's about to blow up, or just get people away from monsters, or to the galley if that's where the monsters are. I think that seems cool. And it's I don't think we've seen very much like that with a feat that is specific to like a space on the board. We have a Guillaume Guillaume. Oh man, it's a French name that I've seen before and sure don't know how to say. Guillaume Delacroix, the Spiritualist. They have 2 influence, 2 lore, 1 will, and the Lost Souls ability. When an ally is defeated, place it in your play area. If you ever have more than 3 allies in your play area, remove all but 3 of them. Okay, so you can like collect allies' souls. Before or after you could perform an action, if you're not in the brig, you can use an ally in your play area. The ally does not wander, limit once per turn. Oh, so the first 3, or so 3 defeated allies stick around and become remain available for you to use. That's pretty sweet, and especially because it doesn't take an action to use them. That seems I love that. That seems fun, and that's the first real interaction we're seeing with the new mechanic, the allies. Call of the Dead is the reveal effect. When you reveal as a traitor, if you're not in the brig, resolve the following activation icons, and it's the horror icon twice. So that's what activates the horrors that are in play, or if there are none in play, moves us up this short track towards spawning one. So no surprise that that we have someone who does that. The Delacroix feat is Unfinished Business. Action, if you're not in the brig, place the top 2 cards of the ally deck into your play area. Then you may use up to 3 allies in your play area without discarding cards. Remove used allies and this feat from the game. Okay. So you're drawing 2 allies and then using 3 of them. Cool. It's just like a supercharged version of the ability they already have. Okay. I like it. We have Sardana Morganova, the Lookout. She has 2 influence, 2 observation, 1 will, and watch. It's an action ability. Action, move to the bridge or to the deck space closest to any passenger, then perform 1 action. Whoa! The deck space closest to any passenger, which would be if there's a passenger on deck to the passenger. So similar to the captain, like Sardana's specialty is going to be rescuing passengers and kind of spawning those allies, it looks like, because she can move straight to them. And I assume I've been forgetting to look at the line of succession. Sardana, 6th on the captain line of succession. As a like kind of member of the crew who has a weapon in her holster and everything, I thought she'd be higher, but guess not. Guillaume, though, again, probably mispronouncing, the Spiritualist, is 3rd in line for Keeper of the Tome, so likely to become the Keeper of the Tome. When Sardana reveals as a traitor, she abandons ship. If you're not in the brig, move each passenger on the board. I was thinking, it's like passenger, it must mean on board, because ship terminology, but on the board because we're playing a board game. Move each passenger on the board to its closest water space, then move each human and ally on the board to its closest deck space. Jeez, it kicks all the passengers into the water and all the players out of the interior of the ship. That seems wildly powerful. And Sardana's feat is Alarm. When an activation icon would be resolved, if you are not in the brig, you may lose 1 sanity. If you do not resolve that activation icon and remove this feat from the game. Okay, lose a sanity. This is just a steep price, but to cancel an activation icon that would, trigger deep ones to damage 2 rooms of the ship or something like that, that seems like something you'd likely use. We have Avery Engelbrecht, the Boatswain. He has 2 influence, 2 strength, 1 will, and authority. You do not discard cards to use allies. Wow. So the allies, How much strength of cards do you really need? Oh, well, there's a couple with 0. The rest are 2 through 4. So, yeah, it's a significant cost to use allies. So being able to do it free and being able to do it, before each action you take, seems pretty strong. I'm not 100% sold on these really, or at least the spiritualist that collects the souls and can use them. That's different. I feel like Avery's just going to end up taking a lot of move actions to chase them around, because after you use them, they wander randomly somewhere else. I'm a little skeptical of this one. When Avery reveals as a traitor, the ability is Manifest Horror. If you're not in the brig, resolve the following activation icons and its 2 grasping tendrils. Okay. And then he has Popular Support. As an action, if you're not in the brig or sickbay, spawn 2 allies in your space, then take 1 title and remove this feat from the game. Ooh, he can overthrow the captain or the keeper of the tome with his feat. That's pretty good. I think that's actually... I think that these tend to be good for the human. Oh, I like them as a human, because when I suspect someone and they have a lot of power from their title, I can rip it away from them. But I guess in the hands of a hybrid, this is pretty strong too, so hard to say, but that seems real strong. He spawns 2 allies also, which is also good, but the taking the title, that seems like the headline there on that feat. Also, he is 3rd in line for the line of success for the captain, so might be the captain in a lot of games to start. We have, Coco's. I'm going to say Coco, but another name I may be butchering. Coco Fernandez, the Antiquarian. She has Eldritch Influence. When a die would be rolled during your action, if you're not in the brig, you may discard 1 skill card from your hand to set the die to 4. If you discarded a Treachery card, set the die to 6 instead. Oh, she makes good use of Treacheries. Right? During her action. Right? I'm trying to think, like, during the space actions. Yeah, you want higher numbers, right? That's a good thing if you set it to 6, I think. Some of those little things when I'm not actively playing the game are a little hard to track. She heeds the mask. When you reveal as a traitor, if you're not in the brig, you activate the Shuggoth twice. And her feat is Don the Mask. Action, if you're not in the brig, defeat each monster, ally, passenger, and character in your space, including yourself. Then remove this feat from the game. Oh, so she does a little mini ritual. And it could be interior, but it defeats her also. She'll be in sickbay. Although she does this as the first action... I would have to look up the first time this comes up. Like, if you get defeated as part of your own action, and it's your first action, can you then just walk out of sickbay? I'm actually not sure whether the defeat effect, like that defeat keyword, ends your turn. I will have to check, or let me know in the comments. Okay, we have 2 characters left, and then we'll wrap this up. We have Raul Martinez Garcia, the valet, who has 1 lore, 2 observation, 2 strength. He's a loyal assistant. At the start of your action step, if you're not in the brig, you may choose another human in your space. That human performs 1 action. Limit once per turn. Oh, so he can give out actions. He is Carson Sinclair, right, from the card game. Just spends his actions giving them to other people. Generally not like, if you're the type of board gamer who likes the spotlight to be on you, probably not your thing. I'm the type of board gamer who loves to play support and loves to do things that feel like they do nothing but help the team. So this is actually something I will totally play. Very much my play style. If Raul reveals as a traitor, he fittingly betrays. If he's not in the brig, choose a human in your space, take 4 random skill cards from that player's hand, and add them to your hand. Okay, pretty much empties someone's hand. And Beckon Call is his feat. At start of your turn, if you're not in the brig, you may move to another character's space. If you do, draw the skill cards shown on your improvements, active and inactive, and remove this feat from the game. So it teleports you and just draws the cards from your items that show improvements. Interesting. And I'm, as I've been going, I've not been looking at their starting item. I'm guessing that he maybe starts with an improvement, so he at least has one, something like that. But that's interesting. I don't know how I feel about that feat being all that exciting. Last one. Wong Mui Chu, the Fisherwoman. 1 observation, 2 strength, 2 will. She has sea legs. As an action, move to a space that contains an enemy, then perform 1 action. Limit once per turn. Wow, she can teleport to enemies and then and for free. So she's a good fighter, I'm sure. I'm guessing she starts with a weapon. Seems real good. Oh, and she's the fisherwoman, and she probably starts with, didn't we look at that, like, fillet knife? I bet you this is her starting. I'm just gonna check. Is this her starting item? No. It's the cat, Mao. I didn't see that coming. Okay. Well, Reunite is her reveal ability. When you reveal as a trader, if you're not in the brig or sickbay, move up to 4 deep ones on the board to your space. The deep is on the board. Wait. Move up to 4 deep ones on the board to your space. Oh, the deep is on the board. So up here, the deep where they accumulate sometimes, that's valid, it's saying, to move them to your space. Wow, okay, so she throws a whole deep one party. And finally, her feat is Instinct. After calculating the total of a skill check, if you're not in the brig, you may roll a die and increase the skill check value by the die result. If you do and the skill check passes, remove this feat from the game. Okay, it's not that different from you getting to add a card to it, but it adds a random number from 1 to 8, which is pretty wild. It makes it, I would probably only want to use this if the skill check only needs, 1, 2, or 3 to pass. But I guess it's pretty exciting that you could take that Hail Mary and try to get a 7 or 8 if you really need it. I don't know. I've been talking a lot. I'm going to take a sip. Okay, that, I believe, is kind of a walkthrough and my thoughts as we've gone of all the new stuff in From the Abyss. There's a couple other rules tweaks, like the game starts using the word spawn to talk about things entering play, but for the most part, I think we've touched on everything. I'm really excited to play this. Battlestar Galactica was long one of my favorite games. Unfathomable, while I don't think it, like in my everything else, kind of all else equal opinion, I don't think that it's felt as fun and good a game as Battlestar to me. The fact that it's a re-implementation that just is lighter and streamlined means it's generally been the one that I've chosen to take to the table over Battlestar. I've got Battlestar up here, but I don't think it's been out of the box since I got Unfathomable. This is just so much easier to teach. And frankly, in a decade here where the relevance of Battlestar is fading, has faded quite a bit, I think that this is, even though people are also tired of Cthulhu games, I think that this is a more approachable theme for a lot of people. So it's a game I intend to keep playing a lot of, and I'm excited I got this expansion. That's going to do it for the video. Once again, if you would hit that like button, that subscribe button, that hugely helps me, helps us, helps the channel. And stick around for some more of our videos where we play through all sorts of things, including, I think, all of the other Arkham games pretty much, or at least all of the current ones. We haven't done a playthrough of Unfathomable, because if I'm going to do it, I want to do it with 5 players, and that's hard to fit in this game room where I film for this channel. So, still trying to crack that nut. Let me know in the comments if you would enjoy a YouTube Unfathomable playthrough, and I'll try my best to make it happen this summer. And then, yes, please comment. Let me know if you enjoyed this video, if you like this sort of unboxing, but with a focus on the actual, contents, the reading cards, even flavor text, that kind of thing. That's what I do when I get a new game, so it's what I wanted to do if I was going to open a new game on camera. So let me know what you think. If you'd like me to do this more often, I probably could. And I will. I'm usually not alone on these videos. Sometimes I am for some solo games. But we will be back with all sorts of fun new stuff all summer and into the future. So thank you for joining. And until next time, be optimal.